For the past few months, I've been catching up with all the past Dragon Age games due to my high anticipation of Dragon Age of Veilguard, and despite their differences, I have a love and appreciation for every Dragon Age game in this series. I fully understand that every Dragon Age game is different and special in their own way, and I didn't expect anything different from Dragon Age of Veilguard. I knew there was going to be stuff I loved and things I didn't love, but I didn't let any of those conflicting thoughts or any sort of online controversies ruin my excitement for the game. After putting in about 100 hours to finish Dragon Age of Veilguard and unlocking all the achievements, I just want to take the time to share my overall thoughts and my experience. Also, just to give out a quick warning, this video will contain spoilers. I'll be going over how I felt about story events and characters very briefly, but nothing at a deeper level. So if you're not trying to see or hear any spoilers at all, I highly recommend clicking off of this video because I don't want to potentially ruin the game for you. But if you're finished with the game and you're trying to hear another opinion, or you don't give a fuck altogether, go ahead and continue with this video. But just to lay out some expectations I had before playing Veilguard, Dragon Age Origins is my absolute favorite game in this series, but I didn't carry any sort of expectations that Dragon Age of Veilguard will be any better than Origins. That's mainly due to them basically erasing all the important decisions that were made by players in previous Dragon Age games. So it seemed like they were going for a more linear direction, which kinda makes sense on their part, because getting rid of all of those decisions would make it easier to create a much more consistent story for future games. But at the same time, it is still frustrating for me to see that almost all the important choices I made in previous Dragon Age games do not matter. But yeah, that's basically all the expectations I had before playing Veilguard, but it's finally time to go into the game. Hopping into the character creator, I started customizing my character who goes by the nickname of Rook. They brought back all the recognizable races like humans, elves, dwarves, and Canaries, and for my first playthrough, I decided to play as an elf, because I don't know why, but elves feel very important in this entry, and they're usually what I pick in Dragon Age games anyway. Also, the character customization is a huge improvement in comparison to previous Dragon Age games. One of the things that bothered me the most about old Dragon Age games is that I never felt like I could properly make a black character due to the limited options they used to provide. But now I can happily say that Dragon Age of Veilguard offers more variety, making it possible for me to create a character that feels closer to what I had in mind. It even lets you choose your pronouns and gender identity with additions like they them pronouns and the non-binary gender option, and there's even an option to add vitiligo to your character as well. And while I wasn't planning to make a character who is non-binary or has vitiligo, I still believe this is a great way to make sure everyone feels represented. And my personal favorite part about the character creator is the hair customization. There are plenty of hair options, and this is probably the best looking hair I've seen from any video game I've played. The hair physics flow so naturally, it's animated so well, and is so great to the point where I couldn't stop shaking my character's hair. And the character creator also allows me to adjust the lighting, which gives me the chance to see how my character looks in different environments, which is always a nice feature to have. While I believe the character creator is a huge upgrade in comparison to past Dragon Age games, there are a few things that could have been added or done better. I was a little disappointed to see that the character creator doesn't allow me to add highlights to my character's hair, because it could have been a great additional feature to elevate my character's hair a little bit more. The scar options also look painted on and lack real definition, which doesn't blend naturally with the skin of my character. And I feel very indifferent about the tattoo options. While I believe some tattoo options were pretty good, there were a lot of options I just didn't care for. The usual warrior, rogue, and mage classes make a return, and I like that each class has 3 unique specializations. There's also a wide variety of factions to choose from, such as Grey Wardens, Veil Jumpers, Shadow Dragons, Morn Watchers, and Thieving Crows, and Lords of Fortune. What I really liked about these factions is how it influences your backstory and dialogue choices throughout the game. Each faction has their own perks, such as gaining reputation when people are part of their faction, dealing more damage against specific enemies, and by having certain stats or abilities increased. This is a great way to implement replay value by making each playthrough feel a little bit different, as long as you're picking a new faction or class every single time. There are also 5 difficulties to choose from, like Storyteller, Keeper, Adventurer, Underdog, and Nightmare. I decided to go with Adventurer because I wanted to see how challenging the game could be on normal, and at the same time I'm not trying to get my ass whooped. Also, I'm not joking when I say this, I spent around 2 hours in the character creator stressing about my choices because I knew these were choices I would be stuck with for the rest of the game. And I usually pick the mage class right off the bat, but for Veilguard I had the hardest time trying to pick a class for my character because every class looked really cool. But after sitting there and looking at gameplay videos for about 30 minutes, I decided to become a warrior for my class and a Grey Warden for my faction because I like the health and defense bonuses. They also gave me the option to customize my Inquisitor as well, and I decided to make her an elf because she was also a female elf in my Inquisition playthrough. Veilguard only lets you carry over 3 decisions that were made in Inquisition, which left me so disappointed. The only choices you can make for your Inquisitor are who you romanced, if you want to save Solus, and if you abandon the Inquisition. So we're just gonna forget about who drank from the Well of Sorrows, who became the Divine, does Morrigan have a kid or not. It's just frustrating that all of these choices I stressfully made throughout the series don't matter. But whatever, I decided to make my Inquisitor romance Solus because I thought it would be much more interesting even though I made her romance Josephine in Inquisition. I chose to save Solus and I gave the Inquisition to the Chantry. To give some context to the story, Dragon Age The Veilguard takes place 10 years after the events of Dragon Age Inquisition and is set in the northern region of Thedas. The story follows Rook and their team of companions known as the Veilguard, and their goal is to stop Solus from destroying the Veil, which is the barrier separating the physical world from the Fade. Solus believes destroying the Veil is the solution to restoring the world of ancient elves, but this would also destroy all of Thedas in the process. Rook and their companions confront Solus by interrupting his ritual, which released 2 ancient elven gods named Elgranon and Gillenane from their prison. Now, Rook gotta seek the help of factions and companions to stop these ancient elven gods from blighting and conquering the world. And for what it is, I enjoyed the main story of Dragon Age The Veilguard for the most part. The pacing felt really good, nothing felt super dragged on, and I was always anticipating what would happen next in the story. And while it might not be at the same level as older Dragon Age games, I like that the game still has dark themes featuring moments of violence and destruction caused by the Blight, while also highlighting the themes of betrayal, power, and sacrifice. I loved Elgranon and Gillenane as villains because they felt like genuine threats and added a sense of urgency to the story. I loved learning about the revealed history of elves, dwarves, and Canaries because it gave me a deeper understanding of their culture and their struggles. I also loved learning about the history of Solus because it gave me a better understanding of his character. And keep in mind, I never really cared for Solus in Dragon Age Inquisition, but I've grown to appreciate his character in Dragon Age The Veilguard. While I really did enjoy the premise of this story, there is a lot to be desired. It feels like they removed a lot of things that were well known to the world of Dragon Age, and it feels like they didn't take that many risks with this entry. They've toned down discriminatory themes such as racism, classism, sexism, and slavery in Dragon Age The Veilguard, which really doesn't bother me, but I will admit it's a little bit weird when it used to be such a prominent thing in the series. For example, slavery is known to be a common practice in Tevinter, but we never really saw much of that. And walking around as an elf, you would think people would be calling me slurs like a knife era or something along those lines, but nope, nothing. It just feels like they were playing it safe and avoiding certain themes because they were too afraid of offending people. I also wish the Inquisitor and certain returning characters had a bigger presence in the story. And a small part of me almost feels like the Inquisitor should have been the main character instead of Rook, because the Inquisitor has a deeper connection to Solus. In general, I don't really care much for Rook as a character either. I don't have the same love for them as I do with previous Dragon Age protagonists like the Warden, Hawk, and the Inquisitor. I'm not sure if this is nostalgia bias, but I just never found Rook interesting, and it feels like they are constantly being overshadowed by other characters. While I do wish certain things were handled differently, specifically in terms of world building and character involvement, the story still had a strong enough plot to keep me invested through the entire game. In terms of visuals, the game looks really beautiful and makes great use of lighting to set the tone of cutscenes and the environment. And I appreciate the new art style because it has a nice blend of realism and cartoonish design to it. But while I'm mostly a fan of the new art style, there are still a few designs I believe were a huge downgrade. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like the new Canary designs because they look kinda weird to me. But to be fair, I feel like the Canary designs have been going downhill since Dragon Age Inquisition. I just miss how they used to look in Dragon Age 2 where they looked a little less human-y and a bit more menacing. I'm also not a fan of the new designs for the ogres and the darkspawn. And I know, the new look is because Gillenane used the blight to enhance the darkspawn. But that doesn't change the fact that they could be blighted and still have a cool design. Another thing I noticed about the visuals is the facial animations. The lip syncing feels off, almost like the characters are mouthing words without actually speaking, which is a little bit distracting during cutscenes.
Rook, I was thinking of taking Hassan for a walk. He could use the exercise. Chance to stretch his wings. Thought you'd like to come along.
The sound design is really great though, especially during the portions of the game that involve the blight or whenever you engage in combat. The music is also pretty good, but nothing memorable. I honestly can't recall a single music track that was played during this game, and it sounded like the typical tracks you would probably hear from the standard AAA game or a Marvel movie, but it sounded pretty good nonetheless. The lighthouse is a central hub for Rook and their companions, and it's also the main location for most of the customization options. Exploring the lighthouse, I was really happy to find out that I could re-customize my character after the first mission, so I always went back to tweak my character whenever I had the chance. You can also customize the armor sets, weapons, and casual wear of both Rook and your companions in the wardrobe, and you can unlock more cosmetics by completing quests, finding them in chests, and buying them from merchants, so they're pretty easy to come by. But I'm not a fan of most of the armor sets for Rook in this game, so I eventually decided to stick with the Warden armor sets just to fit in with my faction. You also have the option to hide your helmet, which is something I decided to do almost instantly. Listen, I spent damn near 2 hours in that character creator. I better see my character's face for the whole entire game. One of the things I really liked about the lighthouse is how customizable it is with several themes and monuments to choose from. My favorite setup was the Navarran theme with the Fen'Haral's Morning Monument, which gave the base a spooky but very cool look. You can even show off a little by decorating your meditation chamber by displaying items you found during your journey. And with all of these customization options for the lighthouse, this makes the base feel more unique, cater to my liking, and creates a home to fit both my character and my companions. Throughout the story, you meet 7 companions: Harding, Nev, Balara, Lacanis, Davrin, Emmerich, and Taj. The game also features smaller skill companions such as Varric, the mentor for Rook, Manfred, Emmerich's skeletal assistant, Spite, a demon that possesses Lucanus, and Hassan, a griffin under Davrin's training and protection. I loved getting to know each companion since they all have their own unique backstories and personalities, but naturally, I loved certain companions more than others. Emmerich quickly became my favorite companion since I loved his personality, his strong character design, his passion for necromancy, and his wholesome relationship with Manfred. I also found his backstory to be the most compelling in comparison to the other companions, and I simply believe he is a well-rounded character. On the other hand, Taj is my least favorite companion, which is kind of funny because I usually love Qunari characters like Sten and Iron Bull, but Taj kind of feels more like an angsty teen more than anything. Everything about their character feels weak in comparison to the others. I'm not a fan of their character design and their story felt lackluster to me, but don't get me wrong, it's not like I hate Taj. I still think they're the funniest party member in the game, but I just have mixed feelings about their character. It was always great to hear my companions having conversations with each other, but my favorite set of conversations were always between Balara and Emmerich. Their natural chemistry made their conversations fun to listen to, especially their passionate discussions about spirits, ancient elven magic, and artifacts. I also love that these two constantly look out for each other, whether it's offering advice or having each other's backs during a tough situation. This game also has wholesome interactions between Manfred and Hassan. You can pet Hassan and play rock paper scissors with Manfred, and for whatever reason he only likes to throw paper, which I thought was pretty funny. While I do love these wholesome interactions, there is also slight conflict between companions, but it always gets resolved pretty quickly. Now, I kinda have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I feel like all the conflict that was present between companions was handled fine. They had their beef, squashed it, and moved on. But on another hand, I feel like the conflict felt a bit too fast. Like, yeah, eventually the conflict needs to be resolved, but having conflict be resolved after like 1 to 2 conversations feels very off to me. And in general, companions don't do anything for me to question their morality. They're all good people, which funny enough is a little bit weird if we look back at old Dragon Age companions. Throughout the series, we had our Anders, Isabellas, Ogrins, Zevrins, Morgans, but in this game, every character is just straight up nice. And there was like one instance where Lucanus almost killed somebody because they were getting influenced by spite, and Harding just wilded out for a minute or two, but that's really it. While I don't think it's necessary to include a character that has questionable morals, I will be honest, I kinda miss dealing with those types of characters from previous Dragon Age games. Being morally complex made characters a little bit more interesting and gave them room to develop through the choices you made. But despite the lack of morally complex characters, I still enjoyed meeting and interacting with all the new companions in the game. While sticking to its action-adventure roots from Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, I noticed that Dragon Age: The Veilguard made a lot of changes to the combat when comparing it to older Dragon Age games, but even then, the combat still ended up being my favorite part about Veilguard. I'll be focusing on the warrior class since that's the class I chose for my rook, but the basic combat system is pretty easy to understand. You have your light and heavy attacks, dodge, block, and parry buttons, which all feels very satisfying to use. Warriors use rage as their class resource, which builds up when you deal or take damage and then rewards you with powerful abilities. You also get healing potions and an ultimate ability that could potentially save you during a fight. There are even some areas where the game lets you fight enemies with a crossbow, which felt like a really fun addition. At some point in the game, you get Solas's dagger and you can equip it with 3 runes. Each rune offers unique abilities and you can swap between these runes to adapt to the situation. While this is a useful mechanic to use during intense fights, honestly most of the time I forgot it was even there, so I hardly ever used it. What took some time for me to get used to was managing all the abilities for my companions and my rook. At first it felt a bit overwhelming seeing all those abilities on the screen, but eventually I adapted to it after a while. Each class has a unique set of abilities which adds variety to the combat, but you're only limited to using 3 abilities at a time alongside an ultimate ability. Since I picked the warrior class, I got access to cool features like throwing my shield at people like I'm Captain America, drop kicking people off of cliffs, and switching between my sword and shield and 2-handed weapons on the fly. Unfortunately, it seems like there are no 2-handed great swords, only mauls and great axes, which is slightly disappointing, but it's whatever. I still enjoy this change and I'm having fun switching between my weapons. The game also has a detailed defense system where they basically give you a clear indicator over your head telling you when to dodge or parry. When the indicator turns red, that's when you dodge, and when the indicator turns yellow, you parry. Parrying in this game felt so satisfying, plus I always love seeing these types of mechanics in the game because it helps me stay engaged during a fight. When I got introduced to Rook's skill tree, it seemed intimidating at first while zooming into it, but it's actually not that bad. As you level up, you earn skill points to unlock new abilities and perks, and if something doesn't fit your playstyle, you can easily refund the skill points and try something else, which I thought was super convenient and made experimenting a lot easier. Once I hit level 20, I unlocked the 3 warrior specializations Champion, Reaper, and Slayer, each offering their own unique abilities. At first, I was just picking random abilities and not thinking about my actual build, but eventually I shifted over to a Fire Champion build. This build is focused on parrying and dealing AoE fire damage to burn through a bunch of enemies in a matter of seconds. Eventually, I ended up hitting level 50, which is the max level cap for my character, and this allowed me to fully optimize my build. What separates Veilguard from other Dragon Age games is the fact that you can't play as your other companions. You can only bring 2 at a time, and they don't have health bars, so you don't have to worry about them dying or anything like that. Even with these limitations, you still have the ability to control who they are targeting and what abilities they use. Companions also have a wide range of abilities to play around with, but they're only limited to using 3 at a time, and unlike Rook, they don't have access to ultimate abilities. It's also kinda cool how you and your companion can combine abilities to create combo attacks. While I do enjoy this new combat system, I kinda miss being able to control my companions, fighting alongside a 3rd companion, and having them potentially die during a fight. It just feels like they've removed a lot of tension when it comes to managing my companions during combat. Each companion has a dedicated skill tree separated from Rook and is a little bit more simplified. When your companions level up, they gain 2 skill points that can be refunded at any time with no additional cost. Level 10 is the maximum level each companion can reach, and I was able to achieve that with most of my companions, but not everybody. You can equip both Rook and the companions with armor, weapons, and accessories to boost their stats and skills, offering more opportunities to optimize their builds. You can also enchant and upgrade their equipment to make them stronger and add additional bonuses at the Caretaker's Workshop. Funny enough, I'm not sure how many people know this, and this is something I completely missed in my playthrough, but you can actually enchant your abilities. I went a full 100 hours without knowing this fact, and I learned this from a random Reddit post. Enemies and bosses has their own personal weaknesses and resistances, making each battle fun and challenging, but after a certain point the enemy variety begins to feel a bit repetitive. I feel like this was the perfect opportunity to use Gillenane to experiment with different creatures to create more monsters to help expand the enemy variety, but they never did that. Also, I feel like the enemies needed more tactical ways to beat them in order to keep things more interesting. And Dragon Boss battles are pretty fun, but they quickly become underwhelming due to them using the same predictable moves over and over. Sometimes they will have cool gimmicks catered to a dragon, like one would use electricity or one would use fire, but ultimately dragon fights felt mostly the same. Despite all the issues I've mentioned, I'll still argue that Dragon Age of Veilguard has the best combat in the series. I just feel like the fast-paced combat, skill progression, and having the freedom to experiment with different builds is a huge improvement to the series. The dialogue direction for this game is a bit questionable. They went back to the old Dragon Age 2 dialogue system where they basically have a good, sarcastic, and serious dialogue option for most of your conversations, and I'm not really a fan of that. I kinda wish the dialogue options were a little bit more ambiguous like how they used to be in Origins. It also doesn't feel like you're playing your own character because you're basically playing a role and you're forced to follow the storyline. For example, you don't have the opportunity to go off the rails and be rude or have any conflict with any of your companions. It's also damn near impossible to get negative approval with your companions since the game mostly gives you friendly dialogue options. You also don't get the choice to say you don't want this companion because you don't like them or anything like that. You're forced to recruit everyone. Even though I personally don't like being overly rude to my companions or necessarily being evil, I still think it sucks that our freedom of choice is being severely limited. Also, I don't like that I'm making choices that I shouldn't be making. For example, Tasha's questline focuses on their identity, but the game would make me pick their identity for them without offering a middle ground, which I think is a little bit weird. As an alternative, they should have let Tosh choose their own culture based on our conversations, so I would have had some sort of influence on them without making things feel so direct and awkward. You might also see some characters throw around some dialogue that can be considered a little bit cringy.
You're really nice. And, you smell good.
Oh, thank you?
Really good.
I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I'll be taking mental damage from some of the cringy dialogue in this game and other times it's just whatever. But the Dragon Age series always had cheesy dialogue since Origins, but in older games it felt a bit more funny cringy than just cringy.
Maker's breath. What is that smell? It's like someone set a brewery on fire.
Somebody's been drinking.
And sometimes this game treats you like you're a dumbass and doesn't give you the opportunity to solve things yourself.
How can we get across?
Do you see those lyrium reserves by that opening? There should be matching anchors on our side. Let's try linking them.
Let's give it a try.
At first, I was fine with this because I thought they were only going to do this during the beginning of the game. But nope, 60 hours in, your companions are still telling you what to do from time to time. But what's kinda cool is that conversations could be interrupted and picked back up if two companions are having banter outside of a story quest. This gives me the chance to listen to an interaction entirely without missing out on any dialogue, which is a great feature. But the part that doesn't make sense to me is that conversations could be interrupted by me walking too fast or engaging in combat during important story sequences, so there's a lack of consistency here. What disappoints me the most about this game is the fact that you don't really get unique interactions when giving companions gifts anymore. They just kinda say thanks and then move on, which is honestly frustrating.
How thoughtful, Rook.
Back in Origins, when I gave someone a gift, they would say thank you and then give me their whole entire backstory about why they appreciate this gift so much.
These were her favorite. I haven't seen these in such a long time. They smell just like Mother used to. Thank you. Thank you so much for remembering.
I just hate how much the dialogue has been watered down to just giving you one-worded answers when giving a character a gift. But if you were to ask me if choices matter in this game, I would say yes, but to an extent. There are some choices that can alter your environment or who is present during certain story events, but your choices have the most impact mainly towards the ending of the game. So I've basically been playing this game like a hoe and romancing every single companion known to man because I had no idea who I wanted to romance. For romances, I got stuck between Harding, Nev, and Davrin, and I decided to romance Davrin since our characters have similar backgrounds and many things in common. The romance in this game is pretty okay, but I always thought it was just okay in every single Dragon Age game. But for what it is, I thought the Davrin romance was really nice. I will say though, I do think it's a little bit weird how you can just flirt with everybody and nobody says anything about it. I'm not even necessarily asking for consequences when flirting with everybody, but Davrin could be like, "Hey Rook, I noticed you've been flirting with Balara. Are you sure about this relationship?" Or something like that. I just feel like this game needs to acknowledge more of your actions. But what's kinda interesting to me is that when you don't romance certain characters, your companions will start pairing up with each other on their own, which I think is a great way to show that characters can have their own love stories without Rook being involved. The exploration in this game is really nice. The world is designed well, and it feels like a major improvement from previous games. No map feels too big or too annoying to explore, and there are fast travel points so I could quickly navigate the world. If you take the Lighthouse Illuvian, you will arrive at the crossroads, which can take you to different areas in Northern Thedas. You gradually gain access to new areas on the map by doing certain quests, and I find myself wanting to explore and interact with everything in the world. Each companion has their own personal exploration abilities that they can use while traversing the map. For example, Harding can move rocks to create new pathways, and Tosh can burn things to get obstacles out of the way. If your companions aren't in your party, you can still use their abilities through Solus's dagger, which allows you to explore more freely without limitations. It would have been annoying to be locked out of using my abilities and having to constantly go back to pick up a specific companion to gain access to a chest or something. In general, it doesn't really matter what companions you have in your party. It's not like how it used to be in previous Dragon Age games where it was necessary to have a rogue at all times to open locked chests. This means that you can focus on picking companions based on their combat effectiveness, story relevance, and personal favorites rather than worrying about their utility. To make things even better, this game has a photo mode for whenever you want to capture all the beautiful scenery as you explore the world. While I never really use the photo mode much, it's always a great feature to include for those who enjoy taking pictures. The game also features some collectathon-like activities that involve solving puzzles such as finding Fen'Harel altars that gives you extra skill points, and Evan Newer's altars that gives you a permanent health boost. There's also a lot of chests that you can find that can give you useful items such as equipment or materials, and if you end up picking up the same equipment, the rarity increases. I personally found all the collectibles that I could check off the map, and I would say that collectathons are worth it doing because they never felt like a waste of time, especially if you're looking to earn valuable rewards. You can also collect mementos to upgrade the Caretaker's Workshop rank, which gives you access to more upgrades and enchantments. You can upgrade your items with materials you found throughout the game, and you can find these materials by looting, foraging, and buying them from merchants. As you level up your factions, you can unlock more items to purchase from merchants in their designated areas. Also, you can sell the items you found in the world to earn extra faction points. Something that slightly annoys me while I'm looting for materials is that animations feel so extra and unnecessary. Whenever I'm trying to break a box as a warrior, my character does a whole ass flip to break one singular box, which kinda gets on my nerves. I found that rolling into boxes is much faster and more efficient rather than trying to slash at them. Also, for some reason, they decided to put interact and jump on the same button, so it got my character jumping for joy whenever I'm trying to pick up multiple items. Quests are split into 3 categories: main quests, companion quests, and faction and region quests. Main quests follow the main storyline and it's required to beat the game, while companion quests and faction and region quests are completely optional. Companion quests focus on the personal stories of the party members while looking into their backstories, motivations, and unresolved conflicts. And faction and region quests are revolved around helping different factions in order to gain reputation, resources, and allies. I really love the companion quests because it gave me the chance to learn more about my companions on a deeper level. Faction and region quests are great as well because it gave me the opportunity to learn more about the world and the characters around me. They both introduced engaging stories and played a key part in world building. But one thing I didn't like is that certain factions felt underrepresented. Like, for example, let's say you would get a few missions from the Morn Watchers. Instead of doing a bunch of missions in the necropolis, they will mostly send you away to kill a demon in another area. I also felt this way towards Ravane because there weren't many missions that helped me learn about the Lords of Fortune. It just felt like certain regions were more fleshed out than others in terms of quests. The game rewards you once you complete all the quests catered to your companions by giving them the status hero of Veilguard. This unlocks new items, skills, and increased support depending on the choices you made in the game. It's really easy to navigate the world while doing quests, since you can easily track it and receive directions on where to go next. Doing all of these quests gradually unlock new areas on the map, which opens up more pathways for exploration. What's kinda disappointing is that there's not a lot of ways to creatively finish a mission. There are like 1 or 2 quests where they gave me multiple ways to finish a mission, but for the most part, all of them are just linear. I also don't like that this game doesn't tell you when you're gonna get locked out of a side quest because some of them are missable. So you would have to focus on doing the side quests first and then continue with the main quests later so you can make sure you don't miss out on anything. And I don't like that these quests don't have a recommended level warning or something like that. I just got tired of going into quests at level 20 and then I see a big ass boss that's like level 40 for no fucking reason, then I try and fight it and I end up getting my ass beat because that bitch is like 20 levels ahead of me, and now I'm sad because I basically wasted my time. And this same scenario happened to me like 3 fucking times. And while these things could be a bit tedious, overall I love the quest structure and I enjoyed doing most of the quests since it did a pretty good job of expanding the world. In terms of the direction the story was going, I enjoyed the ending for Dragon Age of Veilguard because I felt like it had the perfect wrap up for Solas' story arc. Shockingly, there was a lot of surprising reveals I didn't expect, and there was a lot of moments that had me feeling emotional. The boss battles were pretty fun as well, and there was a lot of cool cutscenes to go along with that. There was also multiple variations of the ending depending on what you decided to do throughout the game, and it's pretty much the more content you engage with, the better your ending would be. And I would say the endings are kinda different, but you pretty much get the same outcome every single time. And since I pretty much did everything in the game, I got the best ending, and honestly, it felt perfect for me and I wouldn't change a single thing about it. But even with all of the game's notable flaws and drawbacks, I really did enjoy my time playing Dragon Age of Veilguard. It's by far not the best Dragon Age game in this series, and there's a lot of things that could have been done better, but I still have a strong appreciation for my experience. Also, this is coming from someone who played all the Dragon Age games within a few months to play Veilguard, and I just gotta say I have no regrets whatsoever. I'm just really happy I had the chance to experience all these games and what made them so special. Also, I'm not 100% sure if they're gonna make another Dragon Age game after this one, but I'm still looking forward to playing any potential future games in this series. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching and reaching this far into the video, and if you have your own personal thoughts about Dragon Age of Veilguard, both negative or positive, please make sure to respectfully share them in the comments down below. Anyways, I'm out of here, and I'll see y'all in another video.